of women and minority religious communities worldwide, a resident of Ottawa. She is an active in community affairs, including cultural, education, humanitarian activities. Shabnam was born a Muslim, but converted to Christianity in her early 20s. I'm looking forward to hearing this lady. She's a big fighter. I follow her on Facebook. She probably doesn't know it, but we need people like that to expose what's happening in our great country of Canada. Here you go.
I'm going just to read from my speech, like, from the paper. So if there is any way I can just put...
You want me to hold it for you?
No, I can. If you don't mind, I will be very distracted.
Put it right here.
John, when he was speaking, I really felt I am in Iran and under the surge of the Ayatollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces that they came to my house. And it's just like, I cannot believe that we experience this in Canada. And I can just tell you to please go to the media and speak up about your experience instead of just talking to the like-minded people. Because Canadians need to hear about this experience, and this is not fair under our Constitution. We have the right to speak up, and we don't want them to take away our freedom of speech. So media is the best, I think, tool. Anyways, I wrote. Sun News, actually. Maybe you can start with Sun News and then maybe call the rebel media.
The rebel media.
If CFRA wants to get involved, then involve CFRA. But people need to hear about this. Thank you so much for being so patient and going to listen to my speech. I was born in Iran, and I was born into a Muslim family, but I never practiced Islam because the day that I started knowing myself, revolution or devolution happened in Iran, and my youth and my childhood and everything was robbed from me. So I was just a little, I became a little communist, or they call it now atheist, and I never believed in God after Khomeini came to Iran and invaded my country of birth. I'm going to talk about that we, the people, must hold our authorities and our governments responsible and accountable. And it's our job to make them accountable. Because talking to mirror and to like-minded people is not going to help us. So we have to reach out and we have to speak up. The Islamic Republic of Iran enriched the clergy and brought 3 decades of pain to an entire society and humanity as a whole. I was in my early teens when Khomeini came to power by hijacking the People's Revolution, and overnight all women, including elementary school girls, were forced to cover their bodies from head to toe and were ordered to only wear dark colors. We were no longer allowed to attend school with the opposite sex. Our once praised school curriculum was now replaced by Arabic, Islamic studies, and the Quran, which many of us simply loathed. It was at the same time that I had an awakening and I started my activism. It was age 13 or 14, I believe. I was robbed of my teen years by a radical regime that sought to force its values on the masses by devastating force. My childhood memories were replaced by a reality created by a regime where women were now treated as second-class citizens to men, and even the most mundane detail of our lives was strictly controlled by Khomeini's regime's Revolutionary Guard forces and the morality police. Like most teenagers in high school, I also spoke my mind about the changes that were happening in my country. In a modern society, teenagers attend school, openly spend time with friends, listen to their favorite music, and do all things that teenagers do. In going about their lives, they do not have to worry about political and religious consequences of engaging in normal everyday life enforced by their government. They do not have to live in a fear of expressing their opinion, no matter how unpopular that opinion. What we no longer had and would never have again under the Islamic Republic, simply put, was freedom of speech. Those who didn't speak up put themselves and their families in grave danger or simply disappeared behind the walls of the notorious Evin prison in Tehran. At that time, even 12-year-old children faced the firing squad by political dissidents. Imagine for a moment a mother living in a quiet, uneventful life with her children in the safety of her own home. Imagine the horror of that time, the same woman, when in early hours of the morning, she comes face to face with the infamous revolutionary guards, unannounced. They forced their way into her home and arrested their 16-year-old daughter, the young girl, her only daughter, who knew the eldest of her 3 children, was taken to the much fierce Evin prison where she knew her child would be interrogated and tortured. She also knew that many mothers never saw their children again at that time. People simply vanished without a trace. That child was me. I was arrested by 5 very large, heavy-set guards. I remember distinctly 4 vehicles that came to our house to take me away. A 16-year-old girl who barely weighed 19 pounds. Imagine the terror and the horror that anguish felt by that child. This may be unfathomable to the Western mind, but this was to me the reality for the next 18 months of my life in Evin prison. In my young, thrustful mind, I didn't think that a simple conversation, having an opinion and simply expressing it, would put my life in a danger. I never considered the possibility of being tortured as a teenager, and that my life would be forever changed, and that I would be reminded of this torture every time that I look into the mirror and see a scar on my face. My interrogator was a man known simply as the rapist of the Evin. I never saw his face as we were always blindfolded. Both the guards and the interrogator were very protective of their identity, as if they knew that someday that may be hunted like the Nazis were hunted, and I hope they will. This gave me a clue that they knew well that they were doing what was wrong and simply could not look into the face of a child when they tortured her or him. As time went by, I realized that my interrogator had taken pity on me and decided to leave me outside the torture chambers from 8 a.m. to 3 or 4 p.m. every day for 6 months, blindfolded, cold and hungry, sitting on the cold floor and just, listening to emotional torture, that, people were being tortured, and I had just to listen their screams and their yellings behind the torture room. And then they used to put the Quranic verses on the radio tape, and then they were getting so much power when, they were hearing from the Quran, and then, the lashes were like stronger and stronger, and I think they got power from listening to their religion, whatever it was, the text. At the end, I was given 18-month sentence, but in reality, I should have been hanged for my anti-Islamic regime and anti-revolutionary views. I never, when they, during the time that it was the prayer times, they asked me to go for, it's prayer time, and I said, I don't believe in God. And, I was very lucky that they never did anything to me, and they, just simply for 6 months, I don't believe in God, and I'm not going to pray, and I never prayed. And I think Jesus really protected me there, and because later on I became a Christian. Amen. And I tell you that my mother was praying for me to believe in Jesus, and I had no idea who Jesus was that time. But there is a power in prayers, and we as Canadians should pray for our country. There is a power in prayer, and God is in charge. I do remember making a deal with myself, or with the God that I never believed in that time, in that corner of the torture chamber, that if I was set free, I would dedicate my life to fight the Islamic Republic of Iran, to my every last, drop of vein, blood that I had, the very last breath that I had. I also silently promised each and every one of those who screamed in pain that I would live and bear witness for them. I wanted to live as surviving was the only act of resistance. It was that in Evin in that time. At night, I would count around 60 to 70 bullets, which meant 60 to 70 souls, and been executed in early 80s in Iran under the Ayatollah Khomeini. And I was hearing the last shot, and I would give the victim in the head, like, you know, they coming the last shot. Many of my beautiful cellmates were taken before my eyes. All left bravely and without fear in their eyes and soul. We had decided that dying proudly was our final act of resistance. We were children, but we wanted to die like high-ranking officers, proud and defiant. After I was freed from the clutches of Evin, after 18 months, luckily I was freed, I decided to find out exactly what was taken from me and why so many people were killed. I find out that the Islamic Republic of Iran demanded absolute compliance with penalty of torture and death for those who dared questioning it. There is absolutely no room for error by the citizen, and there is no forgiveness under the Islamic Republic of Iran, and you know, under the Islam that I kind of got knowing, Shia Islam in Iran, no forgiveness. There were teenagers who were shot for simply being in the position of the leaflets or books of the opposition. The Islamic Republic ran elections to give an image of democracy while allowing the masses of choose only among its carefully handpicked candidates who had subscribed for the fundamental beliefs of the regime and had an invested interest in seeing the continued survival of the dictatorship regime. And we just, you know, witnessed the last election that Iran had just like a month ago, less than a month ago, a few weeks ago, the parliamentary election, all, you know, carefully picked. Outside of Iran, the regime openly and covertly supports terrorist activities. The Islamic Republic of Iran supports terrorist organizations, including the Hezbollah and Hamas in the Middle East.